For the delay. We had technical problems connecting three of us in Toronto and one presenter, Clara, in Thunder Bay. So apologies for the delay, but now we are ready to start. Today, CQ is hosting a group of 4 researchers who are fellows of CQ. And the presentation is called ArT as a relational approach to research creation. For those of you who are from abroad, or perhaps in the health science not familiar with the notion of research creation, we will explore this idea and define it throughout the presentation. I would like to start presenting the 4 fellows who are presenting today. Clara Juando, who is a mom, a critical health scholar, and an interdisciplinary researcher living and working in the traditional land of Fort William First Nation at the Lakehead University School of Nursing. Her work focuses on child and youth health equity using creativity, post-human theory, and our connections with nature. The second presenter is Ruth Rodney, who also is a mother, a registered nurse, an associate professor at York University School of Nursing, and an associate director of the Harriet Tubman Institute at York University. Ruth works towards disrupting and dismantling and reimagining systems that are more equitable. Her research focuses on co-creating and documenting knowledge with communities on healthy relationship development, violence prevention, and health promotion. Both Clara and Ruth are the co-PIs in the project that we undertook together called ArT. Janet Parsons, our third presenter, is an associate professor at the University of Toronto Department of Occupational Science and Occupational Therapy. She likes to play around the intersections, not in traffic, but where art, science, and social meet. She feels lucky to work with colleagues and students who like to research, play, and practice together. Finally, I am the 4th presenter. I am Denise Gastaldo. I am a methodologist, a researcher, and an educator who works as an associate professor at the Faculty of Nursing, University of Toronto. And I'm also the education coordinator for CQ at the Dalalani School of Public Health, University of Toronto. My methodological scholarship focuses on participatory action research, and my empirical scholarship focuses on health equity and a lot of inequity, unfortunately, because the world is in that state that we have to continue looking a lot into inequities, exploring how structural issues and power relations shape people's health. So welcome, everybody, and I'll let Ruth start.
Thank you, Denise, and welcome to everybody online, everyone at Lakehead, as well as here in the room at UFT. What we wanted to do is to offer a land acknowledgement for where we all are, and for those of you who are not situated in the territories that we are going to identify today, please reflect on also where you are. So this land has been stewarded by Indigenous peoples for millennia, long before the establishment of Canada. We acknowledge that Takaranto is situated on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations, including the Nishnabek, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Huron-Wendat, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We acknowledge where Clara is currently living, which is the land of Fort William First Nation, a signatory to the Robinson Superior Treaty of 1850. We also recognize the history and contributions of the Métis and Inuit peoples, as this land continues to be home to these communities as well as the First Nations. These regions are part of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and allied nations to share the land and its resources in peace, ensuring that all who live here, including 2-legged, 4-legged insects and plants, are responsible for its care. The Dish with One Spoon reminds us that we are interconnected, not only with the land, but also with each other. Yet we recognize that this covenant has been repeatedly broken through the violence of colonialism, land theft, and environmental destruction, which are injustices that persist today. As we honor the original stewards of this land, we also recognize the presence and histories of Black communities who have come to the territory through forced displacement, the legacies of transatlantic enslavement and voluntary migration. Black people, like Indigenous peoples, have had their relationship with land disrupted by colonialism and white supremacy, whether through stolen land, displacement, or systemic exclusion. Despite this, Black communities in Toronto, Northwestern Ontario, and beyond continue to resist, build, and reclaim space, forging solidarities that challenge the structures of oppression that seek to divide us. In this moment, we must recognize that colonialism is not a past event, but an ongoing system of dispossession and violence. It connects the struggles of Indigenous nations here with those of people resisting occupation, extraction, and racial capitalism across the world. As we reflect, we recognize that the same forces of imperialism, land theft, and racial violence that shape the foundations of Canada are also at work in Sudan, in Congo, in Gaza, and also in Haiti. We acknowledge that true justice is not just about land acknowledgements, but about returning land, honoring Indigenous sovereignty, and dismantling the systems that uphold oppression globally. We commit to solidarity that is active, not symbolic, one that listens, learns, and mobilizes alongside all those struggling for liberation. May we move forward with the understanding that our fights for justice are intertwined, and may we uphold the responsibilities of the dish with one spoon to share, to care, and to ensure that there is enough for all. What we wanted to do today as part of our land acknowledgement is also to draw your attention to this Yellowknife Institute special report that was released just last month. It is written by Dr. Jolie Saskamoose and Dr. Miranda Field. And what it does is it's addressing the calls to action for healthcare in the Truth and Reconciliation from 18 to 24, as well as number 57. And we just also want to acknowledge that the artwork that is on the front of this report and throughout is done by Dr. Lisa Boyven, who was part of the team of Flourishing, the project that was the seed for Nurture. She also led 3 projects and is a good friend of Clara's. One of the quotes in this report says that this analysis reaffirms what Indigenous peoples have articulated for generations and what the TRC formalized nearly a decade ago. Symbolic gestures divorced from structural accountability do not constitute reconciliation. Genuine transformation requires the redistribution of power, resources, and decision-making authority. And we consider this also to extend to knowledge creation in the ways that we consider how we create knowledge. Within this report, they have developed or using a braiding framework to think through how we can better improve the healthcare systems to ensure that we are addressing the calls in the Truth and Reconciliation Act. With that, I'm going to pass it on to Clara so that we can also sort of transition into our discussion of Nurture.
Thank you so much, Ruth. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
So just as part of what Ruth just mentioned about braiding different types of knowledge, we want to start sharing a song, and we'll tell you why. So when we completed, not completed because it's never completed, but when we talk with the participants about after the ArT workshops, and we ask, hold on, Ruth, we can hear like, there was like, yeah. Do you mind muting the one that says CQ Dalla Lana? Thank you. Awesome. Okay, now it's good. Thank you so much. We could not, there was like a lot of like my sound and your sound at the same time, like braiding together, like we were talking about. So when we were talking with the participants and we asked them how it was to be part of the workshops, the ArT, and to create knowledge together, one of the participants shared a song and said, my experience was like this song. So listen to this song and you'll understand how I felt during the project. So we want to share a little bit of this song so you also feel what the song is communicating. So this song is from a Mexican singer. Her name is Natalia Lafourcade, And she is singing a song, she's singing a poem that was written by the lady that you see in the picture, that it's her name is Maria Sabina. So Maria and the song is called Maria la Curandera, that translates to Maria the Healer. However, Maria Sabina, she always called herself a wise woman. She was called the healer by a group of by the ethnomycologists that came from Montana to learn the knowledge that she had about what in Spanish we call las cositas, like tiny, the psychedelic mushrooms. So we translate like the little things. So the group of ethnomycologists went and stayed with her and learned, but also took the knowledge and took it to the CIA and to the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, it's a story that if you want to learn, it's another story that is not new to us. It's another story of colonization and cultural appropriation. So the poem and the song you're going to hear now, it's a poem about the sea, about the sunlight, about how suffering, human and non-human, is transformed by plants, and by the land, and by moonlight, and by the connection between nature, the land, and human and non-human beings. So this poem is about how you are the medicine. So listen to just a little bit.
Okay, sorry, everybody can hear me now online. Apologies for the abrupt end of the song. We just wanted to provide you with a bit so that you could hear. So really what we want to invite you into is experiencing nurture. So like a song, nurture moves through repetition and variation. Ideas return, but never quite in the same way, because each time they shift, shaped by who listens, and what surrounds the listening. So we will speak about words and sounds. Words extend beyond the written or spoken text. We use words in music to think about the auditory, the visual, and sensorial expressions that carry meaning and communicate with listeners. So words are the voices of the participants, community partners, the materials, and the environment. The visual and material dimensions of the song, the texture of sound, the shimmer of light, the movement of air, are as much a part of the communication as the lyrics themselves. Sounds then are words and more. They are the voices of the natural and material world. So the instrumentation represents the site, the place, and the collective involved. Even when no song is played, the materials, like instruments at rest, remain alive with potential. We will also speak about the beats of nurture. The beats bring the sound to life. They are the pulse, the heartbeat of what we're doing. They represent the ontological, the epistemological, and the theoretical depth of the individual, community, or collective. Beats express how and why we perceive and live life in a particular way. They remind us that the rhythm and being are inseparable. The beat grounds us in the living pulse of our world. And then we also speak to the rhythm. The rhythm situates us. It marks the place and time of each project, the interactions of play and creations. Just as a song shifts its time signature, rhythm changes across groups, spaces, and encounters. So each community carries its own rhythm, its own relationship to time, to space, to motion. We learn to adapt, to dance through time and space, to move in tune with the world around us. Rhythm is the timing of sounds and words, the uniqueness that makes each version of the song and each way of knowing distinct. So we're now going to move into the sounds and the words of nurture. I'm going to invite Denise to come up.
So let me see. Oh, yes. If they want to hear you well there. I can move there, whatever. I think they see me. Well, yep, they can see. Oh, they can see. Now I'm here. Sorry, guys.
So nurture, we are going to show 2 slides saying that it's a research methodology, a way of seeing and making, thank you, the world a way of doing research that centers the relations between humans, animals, plants, and materials. It's also a research creation approach to inquiry. Nurture is an inquiry rooted in a relational, non-extractivist, and anti-oppressive approach to research, which is grounded in feminist and post-human and critical theory, made in constant collaboration and in interactions with researchers, artists, community members, nature, and the materials themselves. So to summarize what we are saying in these slides, Nurture is a politically aware and ethically responsible research creation project co-created by community partners, artists, and health researchers. Rooted in these anti-oppressive and asset-based research practices and framed in feminist post-human theory and critical theory, Nurture promotes spaces for safe, playful, and beautiful exploration, connecting participants, artists, and researchers, as I said, with nature, the material world among them and among themselves. Nurture is an attempt to decenter us humans and experience agency from plants, animals, and art materials. Our knowledge production explored how to create relational experience for inclusion and inquiry, given that we work with groups experiencing social and or economic exclusion. It prioritizes the needs of people and attends to the realities of individuals and communities who are not usually engaged in research. I think this is an important point to highlight. Most of our research participants would never be engaged in research, wouldn't be for this level of adaptation and flexibility and focus in expression and art and nurturing that we created through this art creation and research creation project. And these communities who are usually not engaged, and we hopefully want to think that this approach, this methodology helps to nurture, in aesthetical terms, in emotional terms, in spiritual terms, those involved in the process. And that's how I experienced it. It was quite nurturing. So Nurture is a creative, multi-sensory space for the intersection of art, nature, and nurturing to create new possibilities for collaboration and interactions of community participants, partners, artists, and researchers.
Denise, I'm going to get you to stay up here. So we're going to just sort of speak briefly, and we'll have more time after, just to speak about what brought us to Nurture. And I think, Janet, I'll ask you to come up first. Maybe the three of us can go ahead, but you haven't spoken as yet, and then we'll move it to Clara.
Certainly. It's great to be with you today. Nurture was in some ways the perfect fit for me. And I was grateful to be invited to be part of this amazing team. I have long-standing and deep research roots in narrative approaches and see storytelling and its analysis as embodied practice, emotional work, surprising, slippery, complex, and hard to pin down. Arts-based approaches to me seem to fit hand in hand with narrative ones, whereby there are many ways and modes for telling a story through words or images, whether still or moving, music, movement, and so forth. We've already just been experiencing. I was lucky enough to be mentored in research creation by Catherine Boydell, whom some of you may know, and then Clara found me, and I want to say a shout out to Joan Eakin. Thank you, Joan. That was the best introduction I've ever had. And we began collaborating together with young parents in creative practices and storytelling. While Clara was my student, as is often the case, I have learned far more from her than she has ever learned from me. And as she has developed her own program of critical arts-based scholarships, it has been so rewarding to collaborate and have a front row seat on her projects. The Flourishing Project, which preceded this one, and in work that with young parents navigating the margins during COVID times, it became clear that nature within that project was an important character in the participant stories in that project. And so new collaborations, new questions, new and evolving approaches took shape, and here we are. Nurture is an assemblage of people, ideas, materials, events, animals, landscapes, and locales, some long-standing, some ancient, some new.
So I'm going to mention a bit of my experience with nurture. I come from backgrounds of arts-based research and participatory action research, but because nurture is, in my experience, mainly a research creation project, I had to continually remind myself about the centrality of process in research creation and the creative aspects of it. So working with multisensorily and decentering human perspectives was a challenge for me because of my previous training. So nurture for me was an opportunity to unlearn, to adapt, to challenge myself and challenge everybody else in the group, asking questions, why are we doing things this way? And also a big opportunity to learn. I think the relational and the participatory and the arts were always present in my previous studies, but nurture makes something completely different. And that was the major opportunity for me to learn. So it was an exciting team. And I want to say that the learning was only possible because it was clear for me from the beginning that I shared values with the partners, with the artists, with the co-investigators. And together we had this understanding of the power of the arts and nature for community building. And this was the foundation from which I was able to build my relationship with everybody in the project and with more than human elements.
And for me, this project really came from a place of needing more spaces to sustain myself, to keep learning, and to truly flourish in an academic space. Sometimes it can feel a bit stifling, and there's such a heavy focus on productivity and performance, what some might even say called a rat race, that leaves very little room for creativity, care, or innovation, which I think is truly what we need to be able to create the systems that we want to live in. So this project really helped me to return to those ways of knowing that from within my community. Ways that remind me of who I am, that give me pride and integrity, and that always guide me back to myself, even when I've drifted a bit off. It's been a nourishing experience, one that allowed me to learn and create alongside others in a way that felt whole, that felt grounded, and alive. And I would say too that in the learning of it, oftentimes I think that I'm always seeking spaces of freedom. And in this project, that was something that kept coming up. But then in that freedom also made me realize how much there are certain parameters in the way that I work and live that I didn't even realize were there. So it really is truly a process of unlearning and recognizing how sometimes there's discomfort in that freedom, but that's the freedom that we're really seeking. So I'm going to now pass it on to Clara.
For me, how I came to nurture, I think that it was like there was no option, right? It was like feeling of for years of trying to find a place in academia that helped me navigate that discomfort of doing research in a way that my community partners and myself, we felt that there was something that was not completely right, and trying to find that way of doing research in a way that was okay for everyone. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Like, not for me as a researcher and also as a person with experiences and background, but also for all the groups that we were working with and also the community partners. I think that for all of us, the partners and myself, it was kind of a need to respond to the social suffering that we see in our practice every single day, and respond to that doing and embodying the theory and the values and and what we learn and what we know, embodying and creating changing the way that we do research. So I just want to connect it with what you see in the picture. So those are the partners. I mean, not the government of Canada, they are the funders. They are there, but not the partners. And you see like associations and organizations that they work with youth. They work with people who have experienced intimate partner violence and young parents, young women, and youth who are experiencing any mental health issue, or they might, or they are, inverted commas, at risk of experiencing any mental health. So I think that's what all of us, because it was not like only me, it was all of us thinking, like, how can we keep doing things together without being extractivists, without stealing stories, without interpreting the stories of the participants, without making sense on the other side, and kind of trying to make sense and create knowledge together. So that was for me. Yeah. And now, before we explain and show you some images about kind of the fun part, so the art, the doing, the making, which is, it's the knowledge creation piece, but it's also like the really fun part. We want to share with you also what was feeding this. I mean, what was feeding Nurture? It was obviously our relations with the participants and the community and the participants, but there was something else. If you want to click next. So kind of the beats of Nurture. So what were those constants that were always part of and guiding what we were doing? And I want to emphasize the active part, the ing, the doing. There were a set of, let's call it theoretical underpinnings, but that's a way of kind of dressing it and visualizing it. But they are values and concepts that were feeding constantly the research. One that was at the very core center, it's rejecting the human exceptionalism. So the fact that in everything we do, especially in research, human is always at the center. And decentering the human and not centering anything else, just centering the relationship. So the relationships between humans and non-humans. And when I say that, I mean, who are the non-humans? They are animals and plants and trees, the flowers that we have, I mean, in an urban setting or non-urban setting, but not only that, but the art materials, where the art materials have come from, how they have been done, and the place that each one of the groups that were part of Nurture, they were living in. So that was like the intricacies, like focusing on those interconnections, and also in something that like Donna Haraway mentions and explains as like the responsibility, so not responsibility with an I, but with an A. So is that agency of being responsible and that accountability, because we can be responsible. So let's do something with that instead of just knowing. There was also, and there still is, the understanding that there's a pluriverse, that we are in a post-Anthropocene time. And when I say those terms, you go back to Karen Barat, Marisol de la Cadena, and Mario Blazer. But we really, really situated and felt that this project was grounded in the acknowledgement that it's a pluriverse, and there are not only situated knowledges, but also knowledges that are partial. And the one, ours is just one of those. And that this is a world of many worlds. It was also based, and that was the connection, especially to putting art in the center. And when I say art, I think about anything that is creative. I include from painting to walking to running to watering the plants. So any creative activity and using that as a way of creating knowledge. It's also rooted in a thoughtful critique of science as an apparatus of capitalism. And that is connected to the conceptualization of knowledge as a relational element. So not knowledge that belongs to anyone or to humans, but that knowledge is rooted again in that relationship and those connections that that exist in absolutely everything that we live and that we breathe. There are two other really crucial ideas that really guided our work. And I love the picture that we put. And here in Thunder Bay, I have like one of my colleagues that she works with me by observing lichens and not only fungi, but also moss. But there's so much that we learn from nature, and especially from this picture, where you see this huge diversity and variety, not only of, you're gonna call them like plants, but the species that they feed from each other and they live together in a complete, let's say, harmony and in the same space. Although, again, they're like multiple universes becoming one and being multiple and one at the same time. So we work with the idea and the concept of symbiosis, that it's like symbiosis, like in plain words, like making with. It's like we don't exist or nothing exists or nothing is or precedes the doing. So we are because we do things, and we are done in the doing. That made us think a lot because like, okay, if we are researchers and we are academics and we are academics in the doing, then it really matters what type of research we do, right? It's not about just, I'm gonna do research, I have a research objective. I'm going to develop my methodology and methods based on what I've learned that works. So we wanted to go beyond that. And thanks to all the learnings, that was what guided us. So it was about doing and making art all together and doing art all together in order to then create knowledge, and a knowledge that it is not and it will never be static or grounded in a specific moment or a specific time. This is also embedded to making kin and kinship. So if you're familiar, I'm not sure, but with the concept of being earthlings and being worldlings, that means that whatever we do and all that we experience is experienced in relationship. It's kind of a mode of intimate alliance or intimacy as living beings, as many scholars and indigenous scholars and thinkers have expressed. Now, the next. There was also another important thing, that it's doing research for the team. It's a way of practicing reconciliation. So we see research as reconciliation. I already said that this research is a practice, but also the vision of wanting to start decolonizing academia, even if it's a tiny bit in our day-to-day, it means that we need to do things differently. So only thinking and saying, that's not enough. It's the theory that has to be embedded. So research is a way of really doing reconciliation. And also I have to mention that you'll see different authors on the screen, but I've also learned during the time that I've been here at Lakehead, and I've learned a ton from my colleagues who are indigenous scholars and Métis. And this means paying attention that knowledge by itself has agency, knowledge changes, and knowledge moves in the way that we do research. And that's also a concept that Karen Barat work on in depth about how we don't kind of create the knowledge, but can find it and ground it from time and space. So in this way, research is not only are a way of practicing reconciliation, but it's also a political act. And as Ruth mentioned, it's an act of resistance, as an expression of how we live and how we are in the world as researchers and as individual and relational beings. So that's how we got to research creation. Research creation, it's a term, you see the definition, the formal definition from Shirk on the screen. But research creation is the idea that there's no research if there's no creation, no something creative happening, and there's no creative practice if there's no research. So research doesn't go first. We don't do research or develop the project so we can get a creative or artistic product. No. And we don't do art so we can do research. No, it's a symbiosis. Everything happens together. And this means that there's a process that is reborn every single day, which means that you need, as a researcher, and to put a lot of attention, a lot of effort, because every single day is a new day, and you need to almost start from scratch any single day. So research and art making needs to happen at the same time. Both. No research with no art making, no art with no research. Nothing. They go all the time together. And as you see, and I explain this, you see that it's a process that is non-linear. It's a cycle, but it doesn't have a specific beginning and a specific end, which might make us super uncomfortable, but that's the whole point. And being and feeling uncomfortable in this project is a reflection of how powerful it can be, how right for us it was. The next, yeah. So when we were thinking about what it's called so-called method, so how we develop and how research creation is implemented, there's one element that it's very central, and it's the interconnection with place and time. That means that when we were working with the different groups that in the next couple of minutes, Ruth will explain. So we work with different groups that were in different locations in Ontario. So every mini project, every research creation project that we develop in each of these communities was developed with the community to identify what worked for them, what are the needs of that community, and then based on their needs and what makes sense for them, then we altogether chose the type of art, altogether chose the rhythm and the speed of the project. So the interconnectedness between place and time, and the respect of the community and their needs and being guided by that. So that's one of the kind of ways of visualizing the theoretical concepts that I explained before. Another theoretical concept that guided and that translated in how the method was implemented and was developed is the diffraction and interactions, two concepts, very posthuman concepts from Karen Barat, that it's also connected with the concept I explained before, that it's like we don't exist, but we are done, or we exist when we do, in the making, in the doing that we do. So this means that anything that was part of the project was connected to an action. So it was, for example, one of the images that you see here, it was like we were making earrings with rawhide. So the focus was on creating these interactions between the materials that were connected to nature in some way, different types of art materials, and our hands or our bodies. And I say our, I'm thinking about the participants, the artists, the community leads that were part also of the workshops, and us as researchers. And this, again, was an expression of embodying the ideas and the theory and making it visible in the form of a process.
Oh. I understand that some people, oh, okay, on Zoom line are not hearing us in the room properly. So we're just gonna say, I don't know if this
No,
is,
I think we'll just use this one.
okay. So please let us know if you can't hear us at any time, and oh, you can hear, okay, great. So as Clara was saying, we had 5 different projects or areas that were co-designed within Ontario. One was in Halliburton, and that was, oh, it's just muffled, not clear sound. Okay. The project in Halliburton was with Point in Time, which is a youth wellness hub for student or youth that have experiences with mental illness and trauma. We also had 2 groups in Hamilton, one with youth activists, another with racialized women workers in the gender-based violence sector. We also had 2 groups with young parenting women for the June Collingwood Center and Abiona. And while we planned to do 5, the response from the community was quite welcomed. And so we ended up doing 8 groups in total. So one part that I just wanted to note is that we received quite a substantial grant of approximately $250,000 from the New Frontiers in Research Fund. And it was a high reward, high impact grant. And what it allowed us to do was to be able to provide high quality resources to communities. And that not only was with the materials that you see on screen, but being able to engage with artists who were well versed in the different art forms that we engaged in. And so in the interest of time, we're going to present 2 of the 5, but if there's time left over, then we can certainly sort of speak about the other projects. Just gonna. So where we are, we're going to talk about one of the Hamilton groups, which is in an urban area, and then also speak about Halliburton. So one of the main elements of nurture is really humility as practice. And humility is rooted in our understanding that we work collectively to create new ways of innovation. And if you look to the left, and for some of you who are in the room, we have a replica of the mandala. This was guided by the artist Hamangi Shroff, who spoke about how mandalas are processes where communities can create sort of meaning together in the space. So the visual of the mandala, which is Clara has a copy, and the original is hanging in the Sexual Assault Center in Hamilton and area. It really illustrates the interactions between participants as experiences within a greenhouse, with their memory, with playing with materials, with rest, and with conversation. And the picture on the right-hand side is looking at an indoor greenhouse in Hamilton. And what a lot of participants spoke about is the ability to be able to move through this greenhouse in their own time, to interact with the plants, to have the space to themselves, which is not something that typically happens. Some people who live in Hamilton have actually never gone into the greenhouse. So a lot of the participants spoke about having the privilege of being able to engage with nature in this space, and also to create within this space that provided a lot of inspiration. Humility is also about reshaping the world into more just and equitable societies for human and non-human life that goes beyond survival. And I think that is really a key part or component in how we're doing the research that we're doing, that we want to move beyond these ideas of simply existing, that we want to be able to thrive and to nourish, and for that to happen, not only for us as human beings, but for all living things on this earth. And so what we saw is that within this space, that was created, it responded to the need of racialized women workers who often feel undervalued, overworked, and unseen. So in this space, they shaped and reshaped not only that space, but also spaces outside of the workshop day. There was more relations that were realized and created. So this mandala was only one day, but all of our workshops, there were different timeframes in terms of how they could sort of be encountered, and that was dependent on what the community needed and requested, as well as what was needed for the artwork form. Humility is also grounded in a deep sense of love and appreciation for each other, human and non-human. Therefore, the dignity in it is non-negotiable because there is a focus on renewal and care. And one of the points that one of the participants spoke about is that in this space, she felt that there was no pressure for her to always have to show up and create the artwork, that she knew if she had stepped away and took time for herself to perhaps walk in the a greenhouse or to get something to eat, that the others within the space were working towards the mandala. So Mangi, as the artist, guided our sort of development of this mandala, and it was really in the process of us creating is sort of what happened within that space. It wasn't necessarily to have a complete finished project, but to ensure that everybody had an opportunity to create, to engage with the materials that were provided. And it's difficult to sort of see, but all of the materials that are in that piece have different textures. Women brought in their experiences from their own lives, and everybody's handprints is included in that piece.
This is a second kind of example that we wanted to share with you. So this is the group that we work together on Nurture in Halliburton. So in Halliburton, we were guided by the artist Noelia Marsali, that she is a local artist that knows the community, and the community knows her really well. So the project, or the part that that we developed in Halliburton, I find like it's a beautiful example of how the emphasis is in process and not in the outcome, and how the focus on the relational approach and the interconnections between the place, in this case of Halliburton, where nature really surrounds the town, and also nature is embedded in the feelings and the living of in this case, like the youth that were guiding the project. So we partner with Point in Time, a youth wellness center in Halliburton, that they provide access, easy access to mental health services and support for youth of youth living in Halliburton. The program that was developed there was very different from the other ones, in the sense that because of the geographical location, the partners, they set up a bus that were picking up the youth every time or when they had to come, and then they were dropping them home. So for the period of 2 weekends and 3 days during the week, it was a drop-in, but the youth that they were coming, they were consistently like the same group. They took the lead, and they decided that they wanted to do a mural. That is the one that you see on the screen, that was going to be hung, and it's already hanging on the external wall of the center, of the Youth Wellness Center. This mural was designed with the artists, with the elements that the youth selected. So during the first day, we spent like the evening and with the youth selecting the elements that they wanted to see. We're discussing why they wanted to see those elements that you see there: the trees, the water from Halliburton. There's a bee that might not see is in the corner, and recentering and focusing what was the main focus of the research and the creation, because as we said, like research and the creation go together. So we work on the research focus and the creation of the mural. Then the rest of the days were about together building the mural and painting together the design that the youth and the artists got to the final agreement of the one you see. And what you see is kind of a testament. The youth wanted to leave a testament on the walls to the community for now and for the future of who they are, what they've been, what are their experiences, and how they are part of the community, even though they might be invisible or visible in a way that maybe that's not the way that they chose.
Sorry, everyone. We're just realizing our time is not on our side right now, unfortunately. So Denise, do you want to come up to? Okay. Okay, so we're going to move on to just speaking about a little bit about the analysis process within our research. And so oftentimes, or actually, sorry, Janet, yeah, did you want, I'm just thinking in the interest of time. Okay. Okay. Sorry, I'm just mindful that we're a little bit over time. So just in terms of our analysis process of the research, it wasn't only one where we listened to transcripts or recordings. We used ArT as a way to engage with all of our senses and thinking through and feeling and doing the research. So the analytical process was one that really invited us into making meaning in ways that we did through ArT. And so as you can see here in two of the collages on the left, it was one day that we had come together. We had a lot of different materials, and really it was a form of us sort of making meaning through doing. I think I'll kind of stop there, yeah, and then we can.
So just to give you a little glimpse into our process. So, for example,
For participants and
researchers in ArT are engaged in creative practices and
engage in co-creating and co-constituting knowledge production. And so we brought the arts into our analytic process.
this process of coming together to create, to interact, to reflect, and to feel is bound up with the artistic pieces produced, the insights generated, and the new relationships, human and more than human, nurtured. So, for example, when we interacted with the interview transcripts, more familiar activities such as multiple readings and analytical notes and memos were employed, but at the same time, we were encouraged to reflect about what is going on around us while we're interacting with the interview account, listening to the audio file, hearing non-word background sounds, to listen to the tone, warmth, emotion of the teacher, of the speaker's voices, both the person interviewed and the one doing the interviewing, to reflect in whatever way seemed appropriate, whether through writing, painting, drawing, or collaging. Moreover, these reflections, during these reflections, we also attended to sounds in the room and beyond, including music we might be listening to, the presence of others, whether they be family or pets, smells, sensations of warmth or coolness, or even of memory. The artworks produced originated from workshops, as well as the process of reflecting on the workshops and how they ran. And that this is an example of a painting that I made as a result of listening to a particular transcript. And so our approach pushes back against proceduralist accounts of methodology. So an excerpt from my analytic notes that go with this particular artwork or painting. this is what I was thinking about at the point that inspired me when I was listening to the participants' transcript. The other thing was we were able to see what each other was also doing in real time transcripts, and that was also prompted me to reflect differently. So I wrote a note to myself. On page 8, the participant is talking about connections to nature. I suddenly had this image of myself in second year ecology class in Ottawa, where I grew up. I loved that class where we got to go out into the fields and take soil samples and collect swamp water and map small ecosystems. Very basic in its essence, but such a fun and different way of doing work and research. And I love being part of a group exploring parts of my local community that I either never saw or instead got to see with fresh eyes. The idea of things lurking below the surface, the world in a drop of pond water, and the majesty and miracle of all this life in such a small space. I feel like I have lost the connection over the years, too busy to observe these minutiae that make up the world. No time for such small things. And yet aren't those small things really everything that matters, and that they are all connected to what it means to live on this big blue ball.
Thanks, Janet. Okay. It's funny because one of the things in nurture that we did not do was rush. We had time, we had space to really engage. And so it's actually thrown me off a little bit. Unfortunately, that our sort of run out. So we can talk about the sort of exhibit after. Clara, I'm going to invite you back to.
That's okay.
Just we can open to questions.
Oh, yeah.
She said,
Okay.
That's
All
okay.
right. Well, unfortunately, okay, I'm just going to do this because I think that it is important. That just to say that nurture is a way of living, breathing, engaging animals, plants, art, materials, and the physical space we're in. Nurture is a different way of making sense of the world, exploring creative ways of expression and knowledge making, nurturing everyone's well-being and making connections in a safe space. Nurture decenters us humans and brings forward the relations between animals, plants, art, and us. Nurture is a different way of doing health research. It is a different methodology born from anti-oppressive, decolonizing, post-human, Black, and queer critical theories. And we wanted to end with the sounds, but unfortunately, in the interest of time,
we should open for questions.
We will open for questions and comments. So sorry about that. Yeah, so thank you very much, everyone. Everyone. Okay. So Clara, if you want, I'm going to stop sharing maybe. And then I'm going to.
So Carlos is asking whether the project is finished and subsequent project, ideas for a subsequent or next phase.
Okay. We have an echo, so you want, yeah. Okay, Clara, you go ahead.
I was trying to see the question written somewhere, but I couldn't. So do you mind, please, reading
Maybe
it for me again?
I can state it, yeah.
Yes,
So first of
please,
all,
Carlos.
I want to congratulate you because I heard about this project a few months or years ago, and I was very excited to hear how it would look like. So it was really cool to see in this presentation the way that you operationalized the complex theories that inform your work, but that also very important to rethinking ourselves and the ways that we engage with the world and our responsibility. So thank you so much for that. And my question is, has the project finished? Do you have a next phase or ideas for a subsequent iteration? Can you tell us more about that? Thank you.
Ruth, I'm happy to go first, and then I'll pass it to you. No, the project is not finished, Carlos. I think that this is a type of project that I don't think it will never be finished. I think that it's the experience of, that's why we say that nurture is a methodology, because it means that we will just reuse it again in a different way, in a different topic. So the next steps for now, I mean, me personally, I'm working also with the colleagues that are present here in at Lakehead, but some that they are not present here also, and also obviously Ruth and Janet and Denise. So the hope is that we will get additional funding to do a nurture point to with a different group here. And also, I think that Ruth, and I'll pass it to you now. You have like some additional projects here.
Yes. So
Laptop. Your laptop, yeah. Okay.
okay. Yeah. So I think also I was speaking to Clara about other ways of thinking through how nurture can work with communities or be used with communities that I'm currently sort of working with. And one of the things too, I would say for the women in Hamilton who had initially engaged in the Mandela, several of them I've run into in different places, and they wanted to do more of the workshops. So one of the things that I didn't get to say within the presentation, which I think also in some ways speaks to Bryn's second question, is that often what is sort of looked at within the communities is guided by what it is that they want to know. And really, I think it starts with a recognition of a relational approach to sort of being. And so oftentimes, I would say even with the community that I was working with, they had originally asked for or recognized that there was a need to have spaces to come together, and that they weren't feeling that within their organizations. And because also of how busy their lives are outside of work, it was trying to think through how can we create these spaces of safety, of caring for one another, particularly this started during the pandemic. And so in that time, a lot of the women's organizations were inundated with cases of gender-based violence. And so oftentimes I think it is what the beauty of the methodological approach is that it shifts and adapts based on what community needs are and what it is that they want to know.
I have one question from Pia, and there is another one from Bryn later.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah, in the first one.
And also, sorry, Janet and Denise were also.
Sure. Pia?
Can I? Hi, thank you. Thanks to all of you. I really enjoyed your presentation and learning more about the project, which I too remember hearing about some time ago. So it's really quite exciting to see how it's evolved. The question I have, I mean, I'd like to come back to something, Clara, that you mentioned. You were talking about creativity and how nurture advances an expansion of how we should even be thinking about creativity. So it's not just a public contribution to social life. It's not just genius or even an individual trait, but it's relational. And what I gathered from your comment is that there are more mundane forms of creativity that emerge in everyday life. And your comment reminded me of scholarship in the dementia field that I've been engaging with that similarly broadens traditional conceptions of creativity. It's what's now referred to as little c creativity that refers to these more mundane forms of creativity that have been overlooked, specifically with reference to how people living with dementia can be creative in how they're negotiating changes in their everyday life. My question to you is, do you think that there's something about creativity that's lost in thinking about everything that we do as being creative? So in other words, with the expansion, is there anything that's not creative? Like what exactly then is creativity?
I love that question, Pia. And first of all, what you explained before, like I totally agree. I don't know if I would call it mundane because I think that creativity will never be mundane. I think that maybe the value that we attach to some type of creativities, then we value it and we see it as superior than other types. In terms of defining creativity, that's a really tough question. Is everything that we do creative? Absolutely everything? No, or I would not agree. However, how to define that? I don't think I can answer that. But if you ask, are we losing something? What could we lose? I mean, it's just a different understanding of the depth of creativity, and maybe we are losing like more rigid views of what creativity is. So I think that we're losing that, but I'm okay with losing that. And I think we're having a more profound understanding of, again, a kind of decentering the human and decentering what has been privileged as a human, because the type of human that we've privileged, especially in research, is a type of human that does a specific type of art that is beautiful, that it can be showcased, and it has extraordinary value. And we've devalued the other type of creative expressions, and we didn't realize that when we do that, we also devalue the human that is behind, that we call it the post-human. And also, we devalue the relations between the human and, for example, like animals or birds. So when we put emphasis in defining that as a creative practice, we're also adding value to that relationship with the work that we're doing with the birds. So probably we will be missing something that I'm okay missing that. Probably we will be missing something that, I don't know, if we talk further about it, which I would love to talk about more, I would not be okay with losing that. But I think that what we gain is so much because it's centering the ones that have not been centered. And it's so important, especially in health. Now we do health research. It's so important to refocus on those connections with the natural world that we are forgetting. And I think that now more than ever, we need to bring that to the center. And at least for me, it might not work for everyone, but for me, this approach, I think it's one of the ways.
Thanks, Clara. I appreciate your response. And yeah, let's definitely continue discussing this. Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, we'll take one in the room and then.
Yes.
Hi, we'll take one in the room and then go.
Hi, my name is Emily Ruth Rodney. I'm a social psychologist based in the UK, who's here on a sabbatical year in Toronto, where I'm originally from. And so I'm just kind of attending a whole range of talks at different centers around the city and finding out what people are doing, you know. This is my absolute first exposure to the project, and it's really fascinating here, but thank you so much. I was really struck by how very thoughtful you were in terms of thinking through what would the process of the research be, and how is it going to be different, you know, from typical research processes. And then also through the analysis process, and how is the analysis process going to be different from typical analysis processes. And then I was thinking through, I'm sorry to put it in such a linear fashion, because I think this project is like breaking a lot of boxes and boundaries in terms of how we think about research. But if we think about this as the dissemination of the research, what I was struck by was how standard this is. You know, we're sitting around a table, we have, you know, it's a hybrid where people are, you're presenting their research, you did all the talking, none of us said anything, and then we're answering questions. And I just wanted to ask you if you had any thoughts on, like, if you're just exploding the categories in the other spaces, why not do so as well in the quote dissemination phase?
Ruth, I'll let you go first, then I'll go.
Yeah, so I would say that so first of all, this is not the only dissemination that we did. We had a exhibit that ran over 5 days at OCAD University, where the artwork was on display, and we invited people not only to view the artwork, but to engage with the entire space, where there were opportunities for you there was a large white canvas on the wall, so that when participants came also with their children, they were able to engage in the space. There was food. So we actually, in developing this session, struggled a bit because of the fact that we had wanted more time so that we could have people actually engage in the process of nurture. However, these, I think, are some of the tensions in terms of trying to rethink or trying to think of new methodologies and ways of doing things also within the confines of the spaces that we have. So the ways that we tried to attend to that is to still bring in the song, to start with participant voices, because that was actually a song provided to us that after one of the participants engaging in the session, she said, "This is what it meant to me, this is how it felt." And so in that way, we still try to bring in some elements also by providing sort of some of the pieces that were in the work. But yes, this was something that we definitely did struggle with. And even with time, as we were coming, we had practiced and thought about it. And I said to Clara, don't worry, the time will be fine. And then as we're going, I'm getting a bit frazzled because we are behind time. So I think there's those tensions, but that is well noted and something that I think that we did wrestle with as we were creating this session.
One further thing was that you also worked very hard. It was around bringing the participants to the exhibit as well.
Right.
So, for
Oh,
example,
yes.
people were able to come down from Halliburton and things like that. We're making sure that that was facilitated so that people could be part of that, which I think was really important. Right?
Yeah. Clara, did you want to say anything else?
Well, yeah, I think we need another grant to to think about ways of kind of disseminating, because I love that question too, because the way we understanding is that there's no dissemination. There's nothing to disseminate, but there are stories to share. And when we believe that when we share those stories and when we share what we did today with you, you are remaking meaning and knowledge with what we are passing you, like the song that we share with you. So honestly, I don't believe that we are translating or like mobilizing any knowledge, but we are just inviting you to make something else with what we're giving you, kind of a humble gift to you, and then you can take it. And I would really like to connect this with a question I see in the chat by, my apologies if I'm not saying your name right, Breen or Brian Ludlow. So that says that it's possible to begin an ArT study by knowing what your ontological perspective is and nothing else. And like, that's exactly that. It's exactly what we did. So you know the principles, you know what fits you, you know why you're doing this, and not alone, but with the community, and then off you go. And how are you going to do it? You know what the elements that have to be there. You need to practice community every day. You need to center and put at the center the safety of the community, acknowledge their needs, work together. And then how this is going to look like, you really have to wait and just do it. So if you ask me, do you have a recipe? No, I don't have a recipe. But I have principles and elements that you cannot miss. And if you do that, you will reach an end. So I think that both questions, the one that I didn't get your name, but the one we had and the one I see on the chat, I think they are very closely connected. And yes, it reminds of co-design, because I think there are lots of commonalities with co-design, with the only difference that when you co-design for something and you really want a product. With this, you know that there's the risk that you might get nothing, and that's okay. You'll do it better next time. But you have to live with that, which again, it's a lot of discomfort that we are not used to in our academic world, and I think that sometimes it's not even accepted. But there are many things that they are not accepted, and they are going to change in the future. So I'm very hopeful.
It's one of,
I think you want to take one last?
I think, yeah, and because I think that this is an interesting one, which I don't know that I fully have the answer to, but I think for us to discuss in terms of, Simon had asked, I can see that the human researchers engaged, brought in, connected with, and selected objects living and non-living, but how did these objects, if to any degree, initiate these connections under their own sense of agency? And I ask because I struggle with this in my own work and I do not have a good answer for it. In terms of thinking about allowing for non-human others to deploy their own sense of agency.
Can I give an example? One thing that called my attention, one of the artists brought strawberries to a meeting. The strawberries changed the meeting. Strawberries became paint, strawberries became memories of childhood, the strawberries became so many things. So I think there were many occasions, like Japanese paper. Like suddenly people are in Hamilton, but they have Japan. And it's nature, it's paper, and it get all these elements did play a role in and show, we could see the agency of the material world in this interaction. So it's very brief, but just illustrations of what we noticed happen and how meetings were transformed by the presence of particular materials.
And just to add to that, I mean, that's the relationality of the process. So you put the day that you do the workshop, the materials really guide you. Again, you don't have a prompt. You don't have like, okay, we're gonna do this and talk about this theme. No, so we spend time touching the materials, touching the strawberries, touching the paints, or when we were like with the Japanese paper, and that guide the whole thing. And you have to try it. I know you might be skeptic, but it works. I mean, the agency is not only on the non-humans in the same way that it's not on the humans. The agency is in the relation, in the enforcing those connections. So when you are doing ing again, emphasized, that's what makes things happen.
I think we have to wrap up because it's 1:32. We apologize for the technical difficulties today. I want to thank sorry, it's the day of technical difficulties. So I just want to thank Janet, Clara, and Ruth for preparing this presentation today. I think CQ benefits a lot, and the CQ community benefits a lot for when we have people who kind of stretch us a little bit and pull us in different directions, make us feel, think, experience differently. So I really enjoyed being part of this presentation today, and we apologize for our technical difficulties. It was kind of our Halloween, early Halloween. No treats, only tricks with technology. But we want to invite you to be a member of CQ by joining our distribution list and getting to know more scholars who come and present, regularly in the fall and winter and early spring terms. So thank you very much for being here today. And for those of you who are online, thank you.